A decade ago this week, Diana was killed in a car crash in Paris. On Friday, a memorial service was held in London to pay tribute to the Princess of Wales. She was a larger-than-life character. Her every move was talked about, recorded in the press, and captured by the camera. But did the media get it right? I'm joined now by Ingrid Seward. Ingrid's written about the British royal family for 17 years. She's the author of 9 books on the subject and is the editor-in-chief of Majesty magazine. And Robert Jobson, an award-winning journalist and the royal correspondent for London's Evening Standard. Ingrid, let me begin with you. 10 years ago, can you remember exactly yourself the feelings that you had upon hearing the news of Diana's death?
I do. I think everybody does. They remember where they were. Well, I suppose most people were in bed. Yes, in fact, the first call I got was from CNN. And it just said that Dodi had died and that Diana was injured. And I remember my husband saying, "It's going to be a long night, turn the phone off." It's going to be a long week, I think he said. And that really sticks in my memory. But I think because all of us were working, it wasn't until later that the sort of emotional impact hit. It wasn't until much later, actually.
And Robert Jobson, of course, it was a huge week of media and public frenzy in and around London. When it comes to Diana, where do you begin to talk about her and her relationship with the media? Where did it all begin?
Well, big question. I think the media relationship with Diana started way back in '81, and even before that, really, when she was just starting out as a princess in waiting. But
when did she become aware of the media? Did you think she was always aware of it?
Pretty early on. I think that she realised there was a huge impact. And the media, you need to see Prince Charles was on one side of on the street when they were on a walkabout, and Diana on the other, and they'd literally groan when Prince Charles walked over, and there would be Diana, and they were just total adulation. So I think she realised she had an impact very, very early on. She only started to use that impact, I think, much later in life, when she started to take up crusades that were in the shadows, like AIDS and the landmines. She then realised that she could do something for good.
But surely, in terms of the press, she also, Ingrid Seward, had a relationship with them when it came to the deterioration in her relationship with her husband.
Yes, she did. But at the beginning, she was very embarrassed by the attention they gave her and not him, and she was, she knew he was unhappy with it.
But there are some who say that he actually, Tina Brown, I think, said that he actually Charles fell in love with her through the eyes of the media when he saw how the media embraced her. I can see there's a smirk there. You don't quite disagree, but I'll ask Ingrid first.
No, we don't agree with that at all. I think that's absolute rubbish. Diana says, and we only have to believe her, that Charles did love her. I'm not saying he loved her all the time, but there was a stage in their marriage when I think they were in love, and he tried to make it work. He was jealous of her, though. He was jealous of the power that she could bring to anything she did, even if she had a new dress on.
I think that's absolutely right. I don't agree with Tina at all on that. I think that Prince Charles and Diana were in love. I think it's easy with hindsight to talk about he was totally besotted with Camilla and never let her go. I don't think that was the case. I think Prince Charles is an honourable man. I think he tried to make his marriage work, and there was clearly a connection between Charles and Diana. You only have to look at those pictures of them dancing and having fun together. I think that he liked teaching Diana at the outset. It's only when the Diana effect sort of snowballed that he got out of control. And I think that really annoyed Prince Charles. And then they had problems personally, which happened in a lot of relationships.
So he was a Professor Higgins, really. I always thought he was a Professor Higgins. And then his protege became too much.
And at what point do you think that she began to, when she'd realised she'd won the media, then began to use it to her advantage as the marriage breakdown evolved?
I personally don't think it was a conscious effort. I think it was subconscious. I think she was frightened.
You don't think the Andrew Morton book was a
Oh, yes, that was, but the marriage was well broken down by then. I think what happened, she realised, obviously she knew what she could do, but she was frightened. She wasn't very bright, Diana. She was savvy and funny, but she wasn't very bright. And I think it just evolved, her manipulation of the media, because she was frightened. She had no one to turn to, and, but she was still very young. And to have that kind of press attention scared her. So she started to use it to her own advantage.
And she began to embrace it. In terms of putting out a book like the one she collaborated with Andrew Morton, it's using the press as a double-edged sword because it can work against you. Do you think the press began to work against her, apart from perhaps those obviously on Charles's side?
Well, undoubtedly there was a split, because some newspapers supported Diana and some newspapers supported the establishment and Prince Charles. The fact was, I think Diana started to go against the establishment once she realised that she'd lost Prince Charles. And I think that she was furious about the whole relationship with Camilla, which was probably started a lot earlier than has been acknowledged. And I think she wanted to sort of almost prove to Prince Charles through the media, through the attention she was getting, that there was no one better than her, and she didn't understand his relationship with Camilla. But as Ingrid rightly says, by the Morton book, she was looking for a way out.
Okay, so but when she uses the press to put her point of view across, Ingrid Seward, was there ever any point in her life that the press was beginning to turn against her actively?
Oh, I think the press wrote some pretty savage things about her.
Even
from
her
way
own
back.
supporters in the press. I'm not talking about those who would have supported
Oh yes,
Prince
I mean,
Charles.
she would then ring them up and say, how could you write that about me? Or she'd ring someone else up and write a contrary story. She had some quite savage press even from the early days, because that's what they said they do. I mean, that's what Prince Charles said. They build you up, put you on a pedestal and knock you down again.
But I don't think it was. I think that in hindsight, I hear what Ingrid says, but I think at the time there was some criticism of Diana. And yes, I think when she was getting out of control and behaving irrationally, there was criticism of Diana. But most of the time, the media was positive about Diana. They saw her, I think, initially as shy Di, then caring Di. There wasn't really major attacks against her. But when she started to use the media, use journalists to put a point across, which was quite vicious and sometimes inaccurate, then it was a dangerous game.
We'll leave it there for the moment, but we're going to continue this up next on International.
Welcome back. An estimated 2.5 billion people around the world watch Diana's funeral services. In death, as in life, Princess Diana can overshadow the House of Windsor. Even the ceremony marking her passing has been mired in controversy. I'm joined again by Ingrid Seward, the editor-in-chief of Majesty magazine, and Robert Jobson, the royal correspondent for the Evening Standard. Robert Jobson, on that particular day, there couldn't have been more heightened media interest in the life and death of Diana, Princess of Wales. What was her relationship with the press like at the time?
I think at the time of her death, there was a breakdown of communications, if you like, between a lot of the journalists that covered the royal family, including myself, and the princess. Actually, I was in Moscow with Robin Cook at the time of her holidays, but there was a boat full of journalists down there, and she actually was furious at some of the coverage she was getting. She actually went over and confronted a few of my colleagues, James Whittaker and a few other guys there, and said, "You're in for a big surprise."
At that time, we didn't know about her relationship with Dodi Fayed.
Well, I think it had been pretty well speculated who was on the boat and what was going on. And no, we didn't know the detail of it. That came out slightly later. But it was clear that she was behaving, I feel, irrationally at that time. And it was probably, you know, her death was a culmination of a lot of irrational and bizarre activity leading up to her trip to Paris.
Ingrid Seward?
I totally agree with that. I mean, I remember even when we knew for sure about Dodi Fayed writing things about, you know, how could Diana be with this Egyptian playboy? Has she gone off her rocker? And you know, what's Diana doing cavorting around in the Mediterranean, exposing her kids to all this publicity, and why she was Mohammed Fayed? She had a really bad press, really bad.
I mean, is it fair to say it was a parasitical relationship, and had her life continued, you know, her dependence on the media's dependence on her would have increasingly been more and more out of control?
I don't think so. I think this was just a summer of madness, I would say. Yeah. And I think she would have had to calm down. I mean, she was going to blow up, which is what happened, or calm down. She had to, and she had some really strong ideas about what she wanted to do in the immediate future.
The 10 years after her death, is it appropriate to revisit Diana and her legacy, and those who say that she shouldn't be glorified, and those who will have hear no ill spoken of her?
Well, Diana's a historical figure now, and obviously you're going to have positive reviews and negative, and I think that's healthy. Diana is somebody we should be able to review constructively and with constructive criticism. I'm glad a number of books have been written in the first person by people close to her, because it's then one is able to then make a judgment from people at the time, because you can see what actually happened rather than hear conjecture.
And as time passes, how do you think she will be remembered?
I think she'll be remembered in a more and more iconic way. I think it's a bit like Julius Caesar, except the opposite way round, so that the evil that she did, which I suppose you could say was evil, will die with her, and the good that she did will be remembered, and I'm sure that that's what's going to happen. I mean, Germaine Greer's article was extremely interesting. It was her opinion. It was well written. Everyone's entitled for their opinion, But I do feel that very strongly that the good that Diana's done is more positive now than the bad things she might have done.
I think that also, which is important, which we haven't really reflected upon, is because there's been so much publicity about the conspiracy theories and how she died, that many people have forgotten about the good things that she achieved in her life. The fact that she was a beacon of hope for crises such as AIDS, she actually changed people's perception of that terrible disease. The fact that she was prepared to take risks. These are things that I think people should remember about Diana. She was a risk taker. She changed the monarchy for a short time, and I think her legacy ultimately will be that she's influenced her sons, William and Harry, who after all are the future of the monarchy.
There we must leave it. Robert Jobson, thank you very much indeed. Up next on International Correspondence.